Hey everybody, this is Kyle from Berkshire Worms. Today we're going to be talking about growing pea microgreens at home. You'll need some jars to soak your seeds in, some trays with potting soil for growing your seeds. We use 10 by 20 growing flats, some full spectrum grow lights or the sun will do just fine. First thing you want to do is weigh out your peas. We weigh them out dry. I found that 120 grams per growing flat has been working well. I know some growers do use 140 grams per growing flat. We may go up to that, but right now 120 grams seems to be working quite well. If you don't have a scale at home to weigh out your seeds, you do need enough seed to cover your grow medium with a nice even layer. Enough so that there aren't large gaps in the seeding, but not so much seed that it's stacked on top of each other. We rinse our pea seeds prior to putting them into mason jars to soak. The reason behind this is that we started doing this with our sunflower seeds and it cut down the mold we found after planting quite a bit. So we didn't have any mold issues with any of our peas, but we figured since it worked well with the sunflowers, it probably can't hurt with the peas. It helps remove any debris or cracked seeds that ended up in the seed mix when they were harvested. You can see there's just a broken, kind of shriveled up seed. It won't grow, so it's really just there as a food source for bacteria. So I'll remove those. You know, it's not like going through it with a fine-tooth comb, but things that stick out at you, feel free to pick out. Now that our peas are thoroughly rinsed, I'm going to put them into a mason jar. These smaller mason jars hold 2 trays worth of pea seeds. They will swell up significantly, so don't fill your jars up to the brim. And maybe glass is not the best choice since it could theoretically break. We do like glass because it's easily reused and washable and we can sanitize it. Here's another junky little seed. We're going to cast that aside since it won't grow. If it won't grow, there's no use putting it in your tray. Now you wouldn't want to fill your jar any more than this jar is filled, because once the peas take in the moisture, they will swell up and fill that jar up to the brim. So if this were a smaller jar and they were filled up to the brim already, it would likely break the jar. Alright, now it's time to rinse and repeat for the remaining seeds. Now that our seeds are in our jars, it's time to get them filled up with some water. We will also be adding a small amount of hydrogen peroxide to protect against any mold. We will now be adding our food-grade hydrogen peroxide to the seed soak. We had been using 3% hydrogen peroxide, but the more we grow, the more hydrogen peroxide we're going through, and I couldn't find the 3% food-grade hydrogen peroxide in any quantities larger than about 32 ounces, and it was adding up to quite a bit of cost. So I found this 12% food-grade hydrogen peroxide, which I was nervous about using at such a high concentration, but we just diluted it down to the same concentration as the 3%. We just adjusted for the concentration difference, and I've had no issues. Seems to be working just as effectively as the 3% hydrogen peroxide. If you are using 3% hydrogen peroxide, the correct dilution would be 2 tablespoons per liter. Now, don't pay too much attention to how many drops I put in these jars, since I did use too much, but the peas turned out wonderfully. They're a very forgiving crop, and that's another reason why we strongly encourage beginners and first-time microgreen growers to try peas. Alright, all set with the peroxide. Now we're going to give a light stir, and not really a shake, but we just want to get the water and hydrogen peroxide mixed up nicely. I like to let the seeds soak overnight and plant first thing in the morning. You'll know when your seeds are ready to plant. They'll swell up, they'll fill that jar up. When they're still a little bit too dry, you'll still see the wrinkles and they'll still appear shrunken. Alright, we're checking back in 10 hours later. As you can see, the seeds have sucked that moisture right up and they're filling up the jars. We can definitely get these planted in some trays. Now we're going to fill our trays up with some soil, moisten them, and get our seeds planted. We use a mixture of vermicompost, potting soil, and we top it with cocoa. You can really alter the taste, texture, and I think quality of your microgreens with different soil blends. I'm giving a quick rinse of the soil to pre-moisten it. It may look like I just doused that growing tray with a ton of water, but I'm really not. Due to soil's hydrophobic nature, when it's dry, it'll look like it'll puddle up there. But really what I'm doing is giving enough moisture for the soil to be damp top to bottom. Last tray, let's get our peas rinsed and planted. Since the peas have been soaking in that water for the last 10 hours, we're really just trying to rinse that off to get rid of any bacteria that might have come out in the soaking process. Since we have 2 trays worth of peas in that strainer there, I'm just going to, by hand, divide it in half, and I will take a solo cup, grab one half, put it in a tray, and just scoop up the other half, put it in a second tray. I like to spread out the seeds with a solo cup. I find it's easiest to spread them out as evenly as you can first, and then to lightly brush any seeds that are sitting off or on top of one another with your hand. You want as little contact as possible between you and the seeds now that they're clean and soaked and rinsed, but you also can't have them sitting on top of one another. If they are sitting on top of one another, they're less likely to root and grow normally, and there will just be another increased risk for mold and bacteria. Now I'll be spraying the seeds with a hydrogen peroxide solution. The correct dilution would be 2 tablespoons per liter of 3% hydrogen peroxide. If you are keeping your hydrogen peroxide solution in a clear spray bottle like I am, make sure it stays out of the light. The light will degrade the hydrogen peroxide. And we are doing this to prevent the spread of mold or bacteria. We like to cover our pea seeds with a thin layer of cocoa coir. It makes for a killer way of spreading the moisture evenly throughout the seeds. It doesn't have the hydrophobic tendencies like soil does. So I just put a nice thin layer on top and I'll spread it evenly. Once the cocoa is spread evenly, I like to moisten it pretty heavily with my sprayer here. As you can see, I'm not going as heavy as I did in the sink to pre-moisten, but I am trying to get a nice even layer of moisture in that cocoa to help spread the moisture throughout the seeds. You can already see how the moisture pools and puddles on the tray I'm currently working on, but that first tray, the closest to the camera, you don't see any of that shimmer or sheen. All that water has really soaked in evenly through the cocoa. Now we'll get our trays stacked up. We stack them 4 high with the peas. Certain varieties you wouldn't want to stack that high, but the extra weight will help shuck the seed holes and help the peas root well. We'll get that top tray covered with another tray with no holes, and I like to spray the bottom of that tray with just some water, help keep moisture in. That top tray will dry out faster than the rest of the trays while they're germinating. We leave our trays stacked for 4 days, and on that 4th day they'll be lifting the trays up. They should be well rooted, and then it'll be time to get them out onto your grow shelves. I don't put them under the light the first day. I usually leave the lights off the first day, and then I'll turn the lights on the second day. And then for us, they're ready to harvest in 5 days after you uncover them. You can harvest your peas when they're anywhere from 2 to 4 inches tall, or you notice the tendrils start to form. Those are green peas there. They have smaller tendrils. So it's the little squiggly hair things on top, and those are yellow peas. They have much more pronounced tendrils. Enjoy those peas you grew yourself and stay safe.